Hello friends, it's Nick with the Whip Shop, and I am giving this whip away to a lucky winner of one of the competitions at the 2023 Los Angeles Whip Cracking Convention. "16 plat whip, 5 feet long, a 9x8 herringbone knot there at the heel." This is whip number 505. The 6th annual Los Angeles Whip Cracking Convention will be held on Saturday, January 7th, 2023 at McCambridge Park in Burbank, California. Competitions are open to all ages, $20 to enter. Sign up starts at 9 a.m. Competition list: speed and accuracy, single whip freestyle, double whip freestyle, and bull whip fast draw. There's a couple of fun games that we play afterwards that are not for any prizes, but they're just for fun. Most spaghetti cuts with a whip and long whip cracking. So that's one of my favorites. The long whip cracking is always exciting. It says here at the end, we will also order pizza for the end of the day so everybody can share some food before going their own way for the night. In the description, I'll link this Facebook page for the LA WhipCon so you guys have more information on that. So I can't wait to see you all there. And for those of us living in colder climates in January, like right now it's 15 degrees out here, hence the hat. It's always a nice getaway for me. I always look forward to it, not only to see my friends and have fun with like-minded people, but to just escape the winter of the Midwest. So I hope to see you all there. And now, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the tutorial. So guys, real quick before we jump into this video, the purpose of making this video is to just show you a few minor changes that I've made to my stock whip builds. A lot of the things you'll see in this video, for example, the finished whip thong, that's made the same way that I made it 4 years ago in that video. Nothing has changed there. Also, with the way that the handle is braided, same way. The knot at the end, same way. Guys, first off, I have my dowel rod right here. This is 5/8 inch dowel rod. This is the same exact wood size that we used in that tutorial from a few years back. This is red oak. You can use any hardwood you like. Red oak is nice because it's not too expensive and it's not too heavy, not too light. It's kind of right in the middle. So I have here a piece that's cut 16 inches, and that's going to be the handle length of this stock whip. The next step is to mark the very middles of the ends of this handle, and then we're going to stick it in the lathe. So as you can see here, I have marked the middles of this dowel rod, and it's very important that we make sure we get those markings right in the middle. If we don't get those centers exactly marked, what's going to happen is when we put this dowel rod in the lathe, it's not going to be centered, so every time we cut, it's going to be little bit lopsided, and we want to make sure that we find those exact middles of the dowel rod for that reason. Now the next step is to take our dowel rod and we want to put it in the lathe. So I have my lathe opened up to 16 inches. I know I'm using a wood lathe. A common misconception is that lathes are these very expensive tools that are very expensive. I got this lathe for $100 used. You can find them sometimes on eBay. You can find them used in local auctions, or you could just buy a brand new one. I'll put some links in the description to some lathes that aren't the best lathes in the world, but at the end of the day, they will get the job done for you. So, and trust me, this makes things so much easier, guys. It's a good investment if you're making a lot of stock whips. In previous videos, what you saw me do was actually take the handle and just spin it against a vertical spinning wheel. And it worked, but it was so difficult and it was not efficient. It was hard to get it symmetrical. So let's go ahead and get this snugged up. We're gonna spin this wheel that tightens the wood in the lathe. Feels good. This is a Craftsman lathe. It's from the 80s, I believe. So it's about 43 years old. It's an older one, but it's still running strong. Next thing we're gonna do is put on the old visor for safety. If this thing pops out when this is spinning, it can really mess up your day. So put this on. What I'm just testing for right now is to make sure that it's spinning symmetrically. We don't want any wobble going on here. So let's examine it. Perfectly smooth. That indicates that when we go in and cut this down, when we turn it down, it's going to be even. So the next step here is to determine where we want the indentation to be, where the keeper is going to be attached to the handle. So what I usually like to do is I like it to be about 3 inches long. So I have my ruler here measuring at the end. 3 inches is right there. So I just make a mark with a pencil, and then because of the way a lathe works, if we want that marking to be 360 degrees around the handle, all we have to do is fire up the lathe and just hold a pencil, and it'll make the mark all the way around. I forgot to take the barcode off. It probably doesn't really matter for this point, but sometimes it just ends up sticking to your lathe tools, so we'll just take that right off like that. We have a nice mark that goes 360 degrees around the whole handle, and it's 3 inches. This is the part that we're going to be turning down, and it's going to taper as it works its way to the end. Now this is the tool that I'm starting the reduction with, and you use this to actually separate 2 pieces or the clamp end off the wood. So I'm going to use this parting tool to start the indentation right here. So I have here my calipers, and I'm just taking a measurement of that reduced area, and kind of the magic number, or I shouldn't say magic number, the number that works well for me is about 11 millimeters. So we want to start with 11 millimeters on that rebate, that reduction, and just kind of taper it out, you know, 11, 10, 9, maybe end with like 8 millimeters. It's not an exact science, but I like to start with about 11 millimeters. And once we have that indentation established, we can switch over to a tool. That could have been pretty expensive. At that point, we can switch over to a different tool that is wider, that'll get things done quicker. I have here the gouge. Might use this, a little bit of both. Before we get too carried away, we have to keep in mind that we want to keep this end part. So for that, let's go ahead and measure that. The end part is going to be like a little button, basically. And I like that button to be about 1/4 of an inch. We're doing the same thing, just taking the ruler and marking 1/4 of an inch from the end. And that part will be much wider than the rest of that indentation. Very good. So this is my warning track, my stopping area. I want to make sure that I don't carry this out to the very end. This is going to be thicker than the rest of it. So that's looking pretty good. Let's check our measurements real quick. So again, we started with 11 millimeters, and we're ending with about, we got about 8, pretty much right on the money. So we're tapering down from 11 millimeters down to 8 millimeters, and I haven't even touched this button yet. We're about to shape that next, and I'm gonna show you how I do it. I like to just take this slanted chisel. We'll call it a slanted chisel. And I'm just going to just kind of tilt it on its side, you know, and just shape that button. So let's go ahead and do that now. And that looks about good to me. So I didn't mention the diameter of the button. I actually don't know exactly what it is. So let's find out. It's about 12 millimeters. So again, normal shape of the dowel rod, untouched. We start with 11 millimeters. Let me try it again. We start with 11 millimeters here and taper down to 8 millimeters, and then 12 millimeters is the diameter of the button itself. So you can see I just kind of just rounded off the top a little bit, just made a little indentation here. And this is where all of our wrapping, it's where the keeper's gonna go, it's where binding's gonna go, and it's where our little thing, the reason we're really making this video is gonna go, which is a wrapping of parachute cord to just dress it up and make it look better. At this stage, I like to take my guide off like this, and I'll reach for a little piece of about 400 sandpaper. And what we're going to be doing is just kind of going over this area here. Now remember, the only part of this handle that's going to be exposed is about 4 inches right here. So what I want to do is just sand this down, make it look better, and we'll probably give it a little bit of stain to make it look nice, or a clear coat of some sort.
Because I do this a lot, I always wear this respirator even if I'm doing a little bit of sanding, because I want to take care of the old lungs, you know?
So we can go ahead and take this out of the lathe. Let's turn that, we'll back this off, back this one off. And there we have a prepared handle ready to go. So I'm gonna take this over to the air compressor and just blow this off a little bit because I just sanded it. I wanna get all that dust off before I give this a layer of stain. We have here a little bit of classic black satin Minwax stain. And it's been out in the cold garage, so it's actually going to be a little bit syrupy, shall we say. Last time I opened this can was probably a month ago. So, crack this bad bird open here, okay. An old pencil that's beyond repair, basically. I'm just gonna stir it with this. So this is a nice, just a nice satin black that I usually use on Stockwhips. Sometimes I'll use some shellac, like clear coat. But you know, it's not like it's gonna make the handle solid black. It's just gonna get into the grain, and I wipe it pretty heavily too, so it's just gonna give a little shade. Only about 4 inches are going to be exposed on this handle. So just wipe it on. Just like that. Go about here. And also what I'm going to do is probably just get a little bit of the button too, because sometimes a little bit of the button becomes exposed. You know, when we go to put the keeper on, it covers the button really well, but sometimes on the edges you can see down to the button itself. So we're just going to take this, smear a little bit on there like that. All right, and yeah, this is all going to be covered. No need to stain it from here on down, maybe a little bit further just in case we don't plait that much. Yeah, that's all. That is literally the only bit of this wood that's going to be exposed in the final product. So I'll let this, you know, sit for, I don't know, the longer you let it sit, the more that stain will create a rich, deeper color because it soaks into the grain of the wood. Like I said, you know, it's not like I'm wanting this to be solid black. So that's what it looks like before we wipe it. And now let's go ahead and wipe it. Oh, that's nice. I like that. Yeah, it just soaks into the grain. My dad, he's a carpenter, you know, not for a profession, although he did work on building houses for about 3 or 4 years of his life when he was in his 20s, I believe, late 20s maybe, early 20s, I don't remember. But anyway, like he'll still build furniture from time to time, and he kind of got me into staining things, and he got me to really appreciate that nice furniture look. So check that out. That is after we stained it. Isn't that nice? Looks nice. And we'll get the button as well. Again, that's just for precautional measures. I'm glad I switched to this method, you know. Might be a little bit more time consuming compared to like grinding it on the vertical wheel that we did in the last video, but it's just so much neater, guys. So much neater. So now it's time to make our keeper for the handle of our whip. So I have here 3 30-inch strands, and I have all of them folded exactly in half. There we go, that's about exactly in half. And what I'm going to do is grab a final strand. So these are 3 folded 30-inch strands and 1 unfolded 15-inch strand. And I'm just going to tuck this just like this right there and stick this in my vise. Now that we have these in the clamp, what we're going to be doing is just like we did in the video 4 years ago, we're going to be braiding a 7-strand flat braided keeper for our whip. So 2, 4, 6, 7. So what I like to do is just make sure all the strands are separate from one another. And I'm going to take these 2 strands right here and fold one over the other like that. Now from the left outermost area here, I'm going to grab this strand and go over, under, and over like that. And from the right, I'm going to go over, under, over. So this is the exact same thing that we did 4 years ago. And then carrying on from there, we're just working those outer strands to the middle. So whatever the strand right next to it does, we're going to do the opposite of that. So we're going to go over, under, over. And now from the right side, over, under, over. Like this. From the left, over, under, over. And we're just going to do this the entire length of these strands. And again, this is the exact same thing that we did 4 years ago when we made a keeper. Just a flat braided section of parachute cord. So all the way down to the end, I'm going to be doing this. Okay, so I just finished braiding this flat braided keeper. I'm going to take it out of the clamp here. And we'll just lay it right there, examine it, make sure everything is nice and flat. Once I take it out, I kind of like to just take it and stretch it a little bit. Next thing is going to be to attach this to our handle. Okay, so we have here our 7-strand flat braided wrist loop, and it's time to attach it to the handle. So this is going to be extremely similar to what you saw me do 4 years ago in the tutorial for making a stock whip. A big improvement, as far as I'm concerned, is using this. This is 1/2 inch PVC pipe, and it just so happens to allow a perfect spacing that we need right there for that loop. So what I'm going to do is just make sure that both the left and the right strands reach at least 1/2 inch to 1 inch past that reduction point to the handle. So we don't actually need all of this to be braided on the sides, just the top. I just find it much easier to braid the whole thing so everything doesn't come unraveled. So what I'm going to do is take this and push it down as far as it'll go. Yeah, that's great, do that. I'm just going to push it down, try to get the pipe in the middle. Push it down like this, make sure that the spacing is even on both sides. And now I'm going to reach for this nylon thread. And I'm going to begin to wrap the keeper onto the handle like this. So I don't want to go too high, pretty much right where that button is, that's where I want to stop. So I'm going to give it a few wraps and see how this is crept over here. There's more of an opening over there. I'm just going to push it like that with my fingers to make sure everything is even. Now while holding this nylon thread with the left hand, this is something that I should have done already, but I'm going to do it now. I'm going to open those closed loops on the beginning end of the keeper so that we can separate the strands. Just like that. And now I can just hold this with my right hand like that. There's tension on that strand. And I'm just going to unravel these strands all the way up to the wrapping of the nylon thread. So just open these up like this. And the idea is to get them laying as smoothly as possible. So if we just left them braided, it'd be bulkier. So I'm just opening them up like that. And just turning it to examine. If some strands are on top of other strands, it's not the end of the world, but we just want to make sure that most of them are making contact with the handle. So that looks good. Now what we can do is begin to wrap just like this. And we're going to go all the way down to the bottom. And while I'm wrapping, I'm just kind of turning things over to make sure that there isn't a large section of strands all being kind of smashed together. We don't want that. It would cause lumps. So all the way down. And then I'm just going to take a little peek in here every now and then. I can see where that reduction to the handle stops. A little bit further down. Whenever I want to take a peek, I can just, because of the pipe, you know, you just stick your finger in there, hold tension. You always want to hold tension on your thread. We're just going to take a little peek to see where we are. So we have about another 1/4 of an inch to go before we're at the bottom. Filling in that space there. And we've reached the bottom. You can see that right in there. We can see we reached the bottom. Now that we've established that, we can go ahead and come back up, just doing a spiral pattern. And we're just we're seeking out areas that appear bulkier than others. See up here, this is a little bit bulky, so we want to pay attention to that. Again, I'm pulling with probably about 5 to 7 pounds of tension here. All the way up to that point there. And already this is very solid. So now I'm just doing a little crisscross pattern like this. This is a much more sound, sturdy wrapping style, like this. And we'll flip it over and do the same thing right here. Like that. Now that looks about right. Next thing I'm going to do here is hold tension with the left hand. I'm going to cut this strand right here. I'm going to create a loop across like this, right there. And I'm just going to give that loop a couple of wraps, very tight wraps. So that goes through the loop, and then I'm just pulling the 2 strands of that loop. And go ahead and cut this like this, right at the base. And at this point, because we have this tied on, I'm going to slip the pipe out. And that is exactly the spacing we need for the thong of the whip to slip in. Next step here, I have a fresh razor blade. And I'm going to ever so carefully cut those strands off, the excess strands. So just going around, really take your time when you do this. Also be very careful to not keep your, have your fingers like this when you're cutting. If you slip, your fingers will have a very bad day. So I'm just going around like this, one at a time. There's another one there. Be very mindful not to cut your wrapping strands. If you cut this wrap here, a lot of it will come undone. Not all of it, because we did that crisscross pattern. That's why we do that. The reason we do the crisscross pattern is so if we do accidentally cut it, it'll stop at some point and we don't have to do the whole thing over again. So, but just going all the way around like this. Looks good. All right. Snip that off. And there we go. Now notice how the strands of the keeper are pretty much flush with the normal width of the handle here, just a little bit skinnier, and that's what we want. The next step here is to take a 35-inch piece of gutted 550 parachute cord. I'm going to take a lighter, get the end melted, blow it out, and right about in the middle, I'm going to take my thumb and press that in. So now it's melted into the middle of that keeper. I mentioned this a lot on this channel, but if you do what I just did, chances are you're going to burn your thumb. My fingers are callous, so I do it anyway because I can't feel it. I do it too much. Here's a little bit of instant glue, instant drying glue. This is Gorilla Glue Super Glue. And what this is going to do is it's just going to add a little bit more purchase to what we're doing here so this doesn't slip. One little dab right there at the top, like that. I'm going to reach up like this, hold this with my thumb like that, and then I'm just going to spiral this around like that. Just like that. And once we get that overlapped, we can let go. Don't pull it too hard like I just did. Not yet, anyway. Like that. Try that again. We're just going to move these strands down a little bit. There we go. And just spiral down like this. Holding tension right there. Spiraling down. And every few inches, what I like to do, even though this is probably overkill, is I like to just take a few little dabs of this CA glue. And I like to kind of do it to both sides, actually, just to make sure that there's just a little bit extra grip, so it's not sliding around on us, particularly when we're actually assembling this thing. Now, as you can see, I just dipped my fingers in the glue. We don't want to do that. So just wrapping this all the way around. And this is something that I do now with my Stockwhip handles. Again, you'll see on those Adam Winrich style Stockwhips, he likes to do a single strand wrap of either nylon thread or a very thin material, and that looks fantastic. But this is just a nice little alternative, I think, that's a little quicker. And I like the looks of this too. So we're going all the way down right here. I'm going to continue wrapping. And just about when we have maybe just a couple of millimeters left, I'll take that lighter again, melt the end of the parachute cord, and just with my thumb press it on like that. And we can just kind of clean this up a little bit with the flame. See the little fringes sticking out? And there we have our wrapped keeper on the handle of our whip. And notice when we were finished turning this handle on the lathe, how I mentioned that you can still see the button, so I'm glad we stained that. Now sometimes what I'll do, depending on the whip, is I'll actually tie a Turk's head knot over this area here. But for this specific whip, this is whip number 1 out of a matched set of 2 4-foot stock whips. We're actually just going to leave it the way it is. I might actually just hit this a little bit more with a little bit of the CA glue. There, just on a vulnerable spot there. Even though we melted it, it's not going anywhere. There we have it, guys. We can carry on and finish the handle. Now for the rest of the handle, the plaiting on the handle, nothing has changed, so I'm not going to be showing you guys that in this video. So you can see I've just wrapped this with some hockey tape as I did 4 years ago, and now I'm just going to be plaiting an overlay onto this portion of the handle. Okay, so here is the finished handle. I went ahead and did the overlay the same way I did it 4 years ago. The only difference that I have applied to this handle is the addition of this 2-pass 5x4 Turk's head knot that's at the beginning of the plaiting. So that's pretty much it. Everything else is the same. The last step is to take here our whip thong, which is again made in the same way we did it 4 years ago. And we are getting ready to attach this to our whip. So we just slip this over like this, grab the tip, slide that through like that, pull it through. It helps if you don't, kink it up so much. Just give it some slack and then little by little slide it through. And there we have a little pull there. Our whip is attached to the handle. And now all we have to do is wax this whip, tie on a cracker, and it'll be ready to have some fun with. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, a little reminder about the 2023 Los Angeles Whip Cracking Convention that's coming up January 7th. I hope to see all of you there if you're able to make it out. It's a wonderful experience to meet people who are like-minded. Also, if you're wanting to get into whip making or perhaps start a whip making business, this, in my opinion, is probably the #1 place to start because you have exposure to other people's whips. They get to look at your whips. We have people there who have been making whips for 30, 40 plus years. So it's a great way to have like hands-on feedback about your work, and it's very inspiring. So I hope you guys can make it there. And with that, that's all I have to say. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. I'll probably see you in, actually, LA before the next video comes out on this channel. Thanks, guys. Have a great day, evening, afternoon, wherever you find yourself. Thanks.